Welcome back to Central Valley Real Estate Show. Oh my gosh, we've been looking at houses all day that are for sale and ranches all over the Central Valley, but we have a special one now that we're going to talk about. And by the way, the screen says Bertha Salgado and a phone number. We're not going to talk to Bertha. She's the agent helping. Bertha is my friend right now. She's a good agent. Call her. But the property's owner is on the screen with us right now, Nelson Galindo. Do I have that right, Nelson, so far?
Yes, you do.
Now, this isn't a house. This is 900 acres, right?
903 acres. To be
Wow.
precise.
And it's Squaw Valley, which is, if you're not familiar, it's pretty close to Fresno, about maybe a 45-minute drive if you're out in Clovis or Sanger. You get there in 20 or 30 minutes, and it's just up the road. Highway 180, which is a great highway right now. It's been widened all the way through Sanger. Now, Nelson, this is a 900 acres. There's a house, but maybe not great shape, but there's a lake with fish in it. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a lake which is about 2 to 3 football fields, and it's full of water now.
Yeah.
Even during the drought years, our water, we have a couple of small springs and lake and that lake, and there's always water because we're at the base of Ruth Hill, and all that water
That's right.
irrigates through that narrow pass there. So that stream always, and we got a well, and during years like this, springs will come just pop out.
I bet there's a lot of water up there right now. More's coming as that snow starts melting. So it's fed. The lake's fed by a stream.
It's fed by a stream and the runoff from the hill and Ruth Hill.
Okay. Put a picture. We're going to put a picture of the house up there. It's an older home, and it probably needs a little work, would you say?
Yes, it's a cinder block and it has a tin roof. So the guy that lived there was an old colonel who fought in World War II, and he settled there. He was a West Pointer. He settled there with his sweetheart of many years. There's a lot of history to this guy. He was on the Missouri when the Japanese surrendered.
Oh my goodness!
The staff to MacArthur, and he went up there in his retirement, and he brought wild boar, and he introduced Black Angus cows and Brown Angus, and he bought a bunch of wild boars. So there was all sorts of wild boars and stuff up there.
And they're still there, right? The boars, the pigs.
Well, I haven't shot one in a while, but I have.
Yeah.
And they mix with some of the regular pigs, so it's kind of like a mix.
Yeah. Next pic.
But there's some original wild boar.
Now I've got a map on the screen, like an aerial map of the whole thing, and it's a lot of space, Nelson.
It's 1.5 miles square, roughly.
Okay, about 1.5 miles square.
You're gonna need a quad, a gun, and or a horse or something to get around that.
Yeah. Now
it's a long way to walk.
I'm looking at the old barn. It looks like an old barn, so it's beautiful, actually.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that Colonel Stoddard had was that he was breeding racehorses.
Ah,
And in that barn, he won several trophies for the racehorses.
yeah.
The property is about 2,500 feet elevation, so he would raise the racehorses up there, and because they would run at a higher level, when he would bring them down to Fresno, they would do pretty good.
Yeah.
So in the barn still, it's a really old original barn, and it needs some work if you wanted to have it a modern barn, but it's like an antique.
Yeah.
And even his prices of his races and stuff are still in the.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Now I see a picture of some cattle, and so it's a hilly. It shows that the property is a little bit hilly.
There's about 400 and some acres that are flat. Ruth Hill runs through it, and Ruth Hill. Wait a minute.
That's a road, right? Ruth Hill Road.
Yes, Ruth Hill Road is part of the. Is a road that runs through it, and we own Ruth Hill. So Ruth Hill is part of the ranch, and it divides the ranch in kind of like half. 400 acres are relatively flat. The other 400 acres or 500 or whatever, there's a hill that goes, and it's not that steep, and the cattle run through there and eat, and there's a pond on the other side too.
And by the way, if you're watching, for our viewers, the number below, Bertha is the agent helping Nelson get this property sold. Her number is 323-490-9126. Who would you say? Oh, by the way, whenever you look at property at Squaw Valley, there's a couple of questions you always ask. Is there power to the property, and is there a well?
Yes, the power is Pacific Gas, was it
PG&E, yeah.
P&E, right? And they always call me because we have lines that run through the property that gives power to the well and to the house.
Yeah.
And then there used to be, we haven't had a phone there for a while, but there's telephone. It's a septic tank situation, and the gas is propane. We have a big
Propane tank, yeah.
250 gallon or whatever. Propane.
Yeah, you know, if you put somebody, this happens all the time. People buy a property in Squaw Valley and they don't realize that you have to pay to run those power lines. So this is a value. There's already power to the property.
Yes,
it gets real expensive.
Powered up. And with regards to the well, there's a well that was maybe built like 5-7 years ago, and that gives out, I think, 50. It was rated at about 55 gallons per hour.
All right. Nelson, are we going to say the price, or you want people to call Bertha to find out the price of the property?
The price, well, we started off at 4.5, and we made several reductions, so we're at 3.5 right now.
3.5 million.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a good price for that property. 900 acres. My gosh, you almost have a whole state there. It's so big. And
you can't. Well, I don't want to be like Texans, you know.
But it's almost,
Let's not start that.
Yeah. If somebody wanted to live or had to work in Fresno or Clovis or Sanger, it's just a short hop. And you visited there from L.A. You used it kind of as a retreat and a place you could go shoot some guns and hunt a little bit and ride horses. So
For me, it was like a Wally World, you know, like a Disney World, but out in the ranch land.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So we would take the kids in the summers and the spring and in the different, times that we're out of school. They learn to shoot there, run their quads, ride horses, hunt, do all the fishing. There's a lot of bass in the lake.
Wow.
So, you can always catch fish.
Yeah.
Because if you own, one of the things, if you own the lake, and you don't let anyone else fish, chances are you're going to catch fish.
You're going to catch
Not
a
that
fish.
you're good, that you're big school, but you get luckier that way.
Yeah.
So.
And by the way, we're going way past time, but this is just a fascinating property. I love to talk to you about it. Last thought is probably a setup for somebody to come and build a new custom home. Wouldn't you say?
Well, you can build. Well, for me, I wanted to live down here in LA because we had our businesses and stuff here, so we couldn't go live there all the time. Now, there's some people, so I wanted to spend the springs and the fall there because they're beautiful, it's green, weather's good, and then do LA, Hawaii. So if you're looking at it, a retirement situation is different. If you're younger and you're working off site, that you don't have to be in the inner city, like there's so much of that now.
Yes.
You can be off site and, it all comes by internet, whatever, you don't have to leave your house.
Very good.
Yeah.
We're way past time. I just want to tell any of our viewers, there's Bertha's number on the screen, 323-490-9126. Call her. She's got all kinds of information on this property. And Nelson, the owner, who's on the screen with us, he just knows a lot about it and would be happy to answer your questions. Last thoughts, Nelson, anything else you want our viewers to know?
It's leased to a guy that runs a head of cattle on it. And so it has some income of $800 and some dollars, we haven't raised his rent in like 30 some years.
Yeah.
He looks after the property, so when I'm not there, he keeps the fences and whatever, so we don't have worries. We just keep liability insurance, and the cattle keep the grass relatively low, so there's not a fire hazard.
Yeah, and he maintains the fences. That's the key thing right there.
Yes, because the bulls sometimes take them over to get to the cows, trees fall,
Yeah, fences always break. That's the one thing you can
things
count
happen.
on. Yeah,
So
right now.
we're free of that, and he's a really good guy.
Very
So,
good.
which are hard to find.
Well, I'm glad I heard you talk about the property, Nelson, because it really laid out, so I got a good understanding. And I know Bertha's there. Thank you, Bertha, and we're going to drive everybody to call Bertha and get this property sold. Thank you, Nelson. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you very much, Mike.
All right.
you.
We'll be back with more Central Valley real estate right after this.